I remember the Reverend Tim Costello talking about this particular focus this morning, about having a pure heart. And he pretty much said exactly what you said, Glenda. How awesome would it be to see God? And Tim said words to the effect of, if I'm going to aspire to try and get any of these Beatitudes right, that's the one I want to get right, because he said, I really want to see God. So in that context, we, as you know, we've been doing effectively a deep dive into each one of these Beatitudes, and I think Ted's been doing a marvellous job of really focusing on each one of them. But Ted thinks we need a bit of a refresher about where we've been. So this morning I'm going to read all of the Beatitudes, including the one that's the focus this morning, just to give us a bit of a freshen up as to what the focus is. So from Matthew 5. Now when he saw the crowds, he went up onto a mountain and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And this morning's focus, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were also before you. Amen.
Thanks, Mark. As we age, one of the things I've noticed is that we love to talk about our ailments and our operations. You notice that? I'm about to do that. About 14 years ago, my GP put the stethoscope on and said, Ted, you've got a murmur in your heart. And he said, come back in 12 months and we'll keep checking it. So I went to the cardiologist, and 12 months later, it's getting a bit worse, 12 months later, and 10 years later he said, we've got to do something about it. And by then I'd worked out what they were talking about. And they were talking about an operation where they get the knife and slit your chest open and open it up. Oh, I wasn't into that. And then I noticed on the Google that there was another alternative. You go up through the groin. I've got a little wound there if anybody wants to see it afterwards. and they sort of just changed the valve without that big operation. And I said to my cardiologist, that's what I want to do. So you're in hospital for 3 or 4 days and you're out. Everything's normal. And they put actually a pig's valve in. And I've noticed no different at all. I still exercise and all that. The only thing is that Marge comments on the fact that since they put the pig's valve in, I've become more untidy. I'm not sure if that's right. Now, we've all got a heart. We've all got a heart. And beats away, and like a lot of mammals, it sort of pumps in blood and refreshes it and pumps it out again, gets rid of all the waste stuff. And we know what the heart is. We know it's a very important muscle within the body, and the one that keeps us alive. No heart, no life. But when you start looking at the Bible, they start using the heart in a different type of sense. They start saying that the heart is actually the core of what we are. It's the way we think. It's the mind, if you like. And every verse you read doesn't talk about the heart as a muscle, but it talks it about as a way of thinking. Psalm 71, who shall ascend to the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, does not lift up his soul to what is false, and not swear deceitfully. Or Jeremiah, the heart, the way we think, is devious above all else. It is perverse, and who can understand it? I, the Lord, test the mind and search the heart, and give to all according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doing. Do you hear what Jeremiah is saying? God knows what we think. Da, 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 da. What do you think? Now, when we get onto Jesus and when we look at the Old Testament prophecy, we start to see that what is the things they're saying is the way we think is just as important as what we do. And Jesus is concerned about hypocrisy, thinking one way and acting another. And he lost his friends, the Pharisees, very, very quickly when you read Matthew 23. And you hear Jesus getting stuck into the Pharisees because of the fact that what they thought and what they did were two different things. You can see why he lost his friends. Listen to these verses. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint, dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy and faith. It is these you should have practiced instead of neglecting the others. Another time, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside you are full of greed and indulgence. And if there was anybody still, the Pharisees still listening, he goes on. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside look beautiful, but inside are full of dead bones and all kinds of uncleanness. Should look on the outside. You also look on the outside to look righteous to others, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Now, what we read in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, is the fact that we've got two ways of thinking. There's mind and heart. There's soul and heart. There's behaviour and heart. And listen to Deuteronomy 6, a very familiar verse. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And you hear that, and you hear that there's two ways of acting, two ways of thinking. Now, you Cheltenham people, ex-Cheltenham, a few? Yeah. You remember Doug Hughes at Cheltenham? Yeah. Dr. Douglas Hughes. And Doug Hughes was my supervisor when I was doing some post-grad work. And he wrote a book based on this fact, that as far as the church is concerned, there are two ways of thinking. There's one group that thinks with their head, and then another group that thinks with their heart. And he went on to generalise to say that the people who are very cerebral in faith, you find them in the High Anglican Church, Uniting Church, Presbyterian Church, and those who are thinkers, feelers, are more inclined to be in the Church of Christ, the Baptist Church, and the Pentecostal Church. And the feelers are the people who pray before they put their scones in the oven and believe that God will bless them and cause them to rise. And the ones who are the thinkers need to pray that way when they're putting their scones in the oven. Now, I don't know how many of you watch The Chaser on the 5 o'clock on the Channel 7. Anybody watch that? Am I there? Oh, no, two wise people there. I see you there. Now, I get on the treadmill at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and switch on The Chaser, and it's a quiz. And I yell out the answers and nobody seems to hear me. But there's one woman who is a very, very clever lady, Anne Hegarty. And Anne Hegarty knows all the answers and she challenges others to think along the same line. And Anne actually is a Christian. She's on the spectrum. She says she's a little bit on the spectrum. She's very cruel with the people that she dismisses from the chase, but she knows everything. She's a Christian. And she says, I don't feel a thing as far as my faith is concerned, but I think it through and it all makes sense. And she's on the other end of the spectrum as far as what Douglas Hughes is concerned about as far as faith, who are people who are thinkers. And when you think of marriage, how many times do you see couples marrying because they love each other? But you also, as you thought through your marriage, you thought about whether that's the type of person you would like to live with the rest of your life. It's the cerebral part. And anybody who just marries us on heart alone is crazy. They need to stop and think, what are the in-laws like, and et cetera, et cetera. And do you remember my big fat Greek wedding? You remember that film? And it's interesting. Here you've got two people who are in love. They feel it very, very strongly. And one is an American, and the other one is American but with a very strong Greek background. And the American guy decides that he's going to marry the girl, and she says yes. But he knows in his mind that he needs to think this through. And he needs to increase the overlap between their lives. And he joins the Greek Orthodox Church. He starts to learn the Greek language. He goes into the Greek customs. He puts up with the huge family involvement that happens. Remember those great celebrations? And in doing so, he's used his head as well as his heart. And that's what I believe, as far as faith is concerned, we need to do both. And if I am at any end of the spectrum, I'm not so much a feeler as I am a thinker. And I don't pray before I put scones in the oven. Actually, I know better than to do that. So what Jesus is saying is, blessed are the pure in heart, but he's not dismissing the mind aspect as well. You shall love the Lord your God with your mind and your heart. And what Jesus is talking about is motives. Why do we do certain things in the Christian faith? Why in, 1965, 64, I decided to resign from teaching and go into ministry? What was my motive? Was it to get the adulation of others? Well, that happens until the first elders meeting. Was it to make a lot of money? Well, my mates here would say that, who have been in ministry, would say that doesn't happen. Was it to have control? No, you don't have that. Was it to only work on Sundays? You soon learn that that's a mistake. And when you start thinking about it, why? And you want to be a person who makes a difference. Why do we serve? Why do we serve in the op shop? Why do we give? Why do we do all types of things? We need to think it through. And Jesus is saying our motives are very, very important. I had a ministry mate who, every time he interviewed someone to join his team, he would say the very first question was, are you ambitious? Now, the answer revealed a lot. If the person said, I'm ambitious in order to get promotion, I'm ambitious in order to take your place, I'm ambitious in order to have the pulpit, etc., wrong answer. If the ambition was to serve the kingdom of God and extend it, it was the right answer. And when you see that, you start to see that that guy was looking into the motives that cause us to serve God. Ambition can be healthy and unhealthy as well. And what Jesus is also saying, blessed are the pure in heart, he's also saying externals don't matter. The three wise monkeys, see no evil, do no evil, hear no evil. Not good enough, says Jesus. It's not good enough. You need to be a person who's thinking in a very positive way as well. And when he says, blessed are the pure in heart, he's also introducing what is found a lot in the Sermon on the Mount. And actually, it's the essence of many parts of the teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. Let's have a look at one of them. For instance, the issue of anger. Jesus says, don't think anger because it is wrong. Don't even think anger. You don't murder, but don't think anger. You have heard it was said of ancient times, you shall not murder. And whoever ever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you, if you are angry with your brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. So Jesus is saying, don't even think anger. Now, that's not easy to do. It's a natural response that all of us have. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about Rosa Parker, who of course, became very angry about the treatment of Afro-American people in the United States during the 1950s. Remember, she refused to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery and started, if you like, the whole civil rights riot had happened at that time. And when you start thinking like that, it motivates us to think about anger being used in the right way. Anger that pursues justice. Oscar Pistorius, is that a name to you? He got out of jail this week, or is going to, and he was in there for 10 years for murdering his partner, shooting her through the door. And the partner's, the dead woman, her father, 10 years later, is still expressing anger and still upset about the fact that he's being released from jail. But he's not doing anything positive about it. He's just feeling it very, very strongly. And it's interesting how sometimes when a tragedy like that happens, the anger stays there. I was talking to a woman recently who goes to another church, and she lost her son, her one and only son, in a bushfire accident. It wasn't an accident, the fire was deliberately lit. And not only was her son killed, but her daughter-in-law was killed as well. And she says every time she sees grandchildren, every time people talk about grandchildren, she feels anger because she will not be able to be a grandparent. It's interesting how it stays there, and it's interesting how it can damage us. Even when you think of Gaza and Israel at the moment, Israel, they became angry, the Palestinians became angry with them, the rest of the Arab nations became angry with them when they moved in 1947. And then the Israelites became angry with the Palestinians because they didn't want them there, and they sent rockets over, so Israel sends the planes over, and what happens? Devastation, cruelty, unfairness, injustice, and murder. All starts because of anger. And what Jesus is saying, don't even think anger, because it does lead, in some cases, to murder, as we have seen. But none of us here have murdered anybody. We might have felt it at times, but we haven't done it. But what we do find is it damages relationships. It damages our self-esteem. It damages who we are as well as others as well. And each one of us at times have felt very angry about a family member or a political leader or a corporation. And sometimes we need to hear Jesus' word, let it go. Turn it into a positive force and make a difference. Blessed are the pure in heart. Or what about giving? This is where Jesus is saying, hey, it's the way you think is also important. Beware of practicing your righteousness before others. This is Matthew. In order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. When you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do, as they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, and that your alms may be done in secret. And the Father who sees in secret will reward you. Now, Alan Avery would remember that verse very, very well. It's when Alan conducted planned giving programs in Victoria and Tasmania, and I took over his role in 1969. And that was the most quoted verse that you would hear. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Because what the planned giving program did was say, let's remove the shroud of secrecy that covers giving. We don't want anybody else to know. And in some ways, your giving became more public in a planned giving program. And don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing was quoted by the people who didn't want anybody to know about their giving. Why didn't they want anybody to know? They had good reason, because some of them were not very, very good givers. And I think it was Alan who taught me to say, don't let your right hand know what your left hand doing means that you should be giving with both hands. Now, when we think of that, we start to think about the fact that motivation is important. Some years ago, Willow Creek, when it was a very popular church, put out a whole series of dramas, and one of them was to do with giving. And they lined 4 people up to give their motives of giving. And one guy, the actor, would say, he'd hold up his checkbook and say, I need to give, and I need to make sure that everybody else sees me writing out the cheque. And when the treasurer sees my cheque with my name on it, he'll know that I'm a very generous person. And perhaps, the drama script goes on, they'll make me the chairman of the board because I've been so generous. And then you start to think of what Jesus is saying. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Give in secret, because you're not going to be seeking a reward from others. You'll be seeking a reward in heaven. And again, what Jesus is saying, when we give, your heart is the important part, not the external applause of other people. And what about lust? You have heard, this is again Matthew 5:27-30. You have heard it said that you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery in her heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better to lose one of your members than the whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it out and throw it away. For it is better for one of your members than the whole body to be cut in hell. Now, it's an interesting verse. A guy called Origen, who was a leader in the church in the 3rd century, he felt that verse should be taken literally. And he damaged himself in the process. But when you look at this verse, it's so important. The people who were listening were mainly men. And the whole adultery thing favoured the men. Now, for example, if a woman was raped in the city, she would be charged as an adulterer. Raped. Why? Because in the city you can yell out for help and people will hear you and help you. But if she's raped in the paddocks, in the fields, she is a victim of rape because no one would hear her yell. And you hear that type of thinking in the Old Testament and you realise that the whole adultery laws favoured the man. And women had no rights, and if they felt that their husband was being unfaithful to them and they were divorced, they were cast out. And they had no rights of inheritance, no rights of children access, no rights of property or anything like that. And what Jesus is saying to the guys, hey, adultery is bad, but even to think adultery is not a good idea. I remember in our announcements once in the church of Wollongong, and our youth leader stood up and said to the congregation, next Friday night, youth night, we want you to all come along because we're going to look at porn. Now, what he meant was, we're going to think about porn, we're going to teach you about porn. But there was a record attendance that night. But how things can change, I remember as a teenager, you know, we used to pass around at Melbourne High, we used to pass around the centrefold of the Man magazine. And it didn't reveal much, but it sort of tittled your imagination. And I remember the film Peyton Place. Do you remember that one? Did anybody see it? And it was supposed to be a bit pornographic. And I went along as a teenager, eager to sort of sit there with binoculars, and all it showed in the way just two little bare bottoms, which we've all got one of those. And it was hardly pornographic. And when you think of the first time a toilet was shown in a film, anybody know the answer to that one during the 1960s? The film Psycho by Hitchcock. And they actually showed a toilet, which is sort of bordering on to pornographic, so I don't know. Now you think of today and the explicit sexual scenes that are shown. And sometimes between heterosexual couples, between homosexual couples, and it's changed completely. And Marge and I, as I said to you a couple of weeks ago, we stick to Sound of Music, and what's the one we watched last night? The Vet?
The Doctor, whatever.
Yeah. No pornography at all. Now, what was it? James Herriot thing, yeah. Watch that, that's pretty safe. Now, when you think about it, what Jesus is saying to us, when we think adultery, when we think negatively about the other person, and it is thinking negatively, because most pornography seems to demean the status of sex and the status of women. And Jesus is saying, in our environment, and so much more relevant, is saying, don't even think about it. And I often wonder if there's a cause and effect. We're hearing a lot more these days about violence towards women. And I just wonder if the fact that pornography has become much more frequent, if that is a cause or a contributing factor. Okay, don't even think about it, says Jesus. What about prayer? And whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at street corners, that they may be seen by others. Whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. Now, again, this is what Jesus is saying. Don't just be public with your worship. Don't be just public with your attitude. Don't just be public with the way that you express your faith. Think about who you are as well. Now, I've sat through many prayer meetings, and I came to the conclusion in some places, not here, but in some places, they were just a bit of a gossip session. I've sat through a prayer meeting where the lady who was supposedly talking to God, she was actually talking to me, giving me a message through her prayers. I've listened to a lot of Magellan prayers. You know what a Magellan prayer is? Round and round the world without a stop. I've heard all that as far as prayer meetings is concerned. But even though we've heard all that, Jesus is not condemning prayer meetings, but is condemning the motive. It's not meant to be a display of piety. Blessed in the pure in heart. Now, it's interesting that Paul picks up this thought, and he says so often we are, if you like, displaying piety, but inwardly we're out of step. Listen to what he says in Philippians 2. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard each other as better as yourselves. Don't look to your own interest, but to the interests of others. Let this mind be in you, which is in Christ Jesus. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. What does that mean? It's interesting when you look at the Old Testament and you look at Isaiah 6 and have a look at that. And Isaiah the prophet, and this is repeated in Revelation, comes close to seeing God, but he doesn't. He just sees the throne. He just sees what's happening around the throne. And actually, there's very little evidence of seeing God in the Bible. And Jesus himself said, no one has seen God, but I, the Son, have made him known. So I think that when we interpret as seeing God, whoa, wow, look at that, that's not what Jesus had in mind. He was saying we will see God at work. We will see God more clearly as far as his will for our lives is concerned. We will see God more clearly as far as his will for our church is concerned. We're more aware of God. We're more aware of what he wants to do for us. And I think seeing God will be something that is reserved for us in the next life. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. In other words, Jesus is saying, be careful of the way that you think. Thanks, Marge.
We're going to prepare our hearts now for a time of communion. But before we do that, I'm going to read from Colossians 3. Paul is saying, put to death, therefore, whatever in you is earthly: fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. On account of these, the wrath of God is coming on those who are disobedient. These are the ways that you once followed when you were living that life. But now you must get rid of all these things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have stripped off the old self with its practices and have clothed yourselves with the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its creator. In that renewal, there's no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all. So now, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in the one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Let us pray together. Father, we do thank you for this time of communion when we can reflect on who we are and what you want us to become. We see the love, the purity, the kindness, the patience, the compassion of Jesus, and we desire to become more like him. In the quietness now, hear our prayers of confession for the times that we've failed to live as you would want us to live. Calm our minds, Lord, so that we may be slow to anger and quick to soothe the anger of others. Give us an understanding of ourselves and our situations so that we may react as Jesus taught us to in the Beatitudes. In the power of your Spirit, may we honour you in all we do and say, and may our words bring encouragement to others. So as we take the bread and wine, we meditate on the abundant new life that we have in Christ Jesus. We thank you. We acknowledge all you've done through Jesus in order to free us to live a pure life as you meant us to. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. So let us come forward now as we give of ourselves and our offering, as we take the bread and the cup. Let us meditate and give thanks.